This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie, it's a good Sunday morning.
That's what you say today, Scott. You know, this has been a tough week listening to the news. I almost got to the point where I was just going to turn the radio off, our beloved radio.
Why?
And turn it off. Well, because everything you hear on the news is just so, depressing or controversial or irritating. You know, it reminds me of the old E.O. Wilson quote, which is, we're drowning in information but starved for wisdom. And when you listen to what's going on, mass shooting in the school, debate over whether a 14-year-old is an adult or not, or consensual, in a Senate race. When did you ever think in your lifetime that in 2017 we were going to have to go out and say Nazis are bad people and 14-year-old girls are children?
Are off limits.
It's just crazy listening to all that kind of stuff.
Well, you know what, Arnie? There's escapism. You need to plug into escapism. Okay, how do you escape from the news?
Well, I'm looking at other planets,
right?
In our solar system, that might be a good place to go to at some point.
Okay.
Although I did just read that they're talking about commercial space travel by 2020. Would you go up?
Of course.
Would you go up and risk your life and floating in outer space somewhere?
Do I have my
ground control to Major Tom? Okay. Would you do that?
I would if I had my beloved with me.
Oh yeah, well that would make sense.
And I'm not even talking about my wife.
You talk about your rabbi?
Talking about the rabbi.
Yeah, take him with you up there.
Nah.
So who do we have today? What's our show focused?
Jim Louderback. This is big. Okay, this is a big get for us.
Because,
really? Yeah.
Too big for us, or just stretching us a little bit?
It's stretching us a lot. Actually, Jim comes to us he's with VidCon. He's been with
more
VidCon.
Than Dominic Chianese stretching us.
More than Dominic Chianese. No, Jim is he's not quite a transplant yet, but we'll talk all about that. He's on the commute right now from Northern California to Missoula, running VidCon.
Which is
CEO.
Which is, tell our listeners what VidCon is before.
Well, you know what? I'm going to leave it to Jim to tell because there's a lot of ways to interpret what VidCon is. But if we're talking about escapism and we're talking about a place to go in the digital world that you can actually escape and be entertained and informed, well, VidCon kind of captures all that, and it kind of makes way for the video stars of today and tomorrow through the different conferences that they do. And I'm probably mauling this, but we're going to ask Jim all about VidCon.
I know VidCon last year had almost 27,000 people participating, which is huge.
That's not shabby.
No, that's fantastic.
So we'll be back after these words with our guest, Jim Louderback, new CEO of VidCon. Again, we are presented by Dawn Maddox, Engel, and Volkers. Her email address is dawnmaddox.evusa.com. Back after this. All right, we are back with our guest, Jim Louderback.
Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's nice to be here. Thanks.
So Scott mangled this whole thing on VidCon. So will you, for our listeners, tell us what is VidCon and a little bit about the genesis of it and what's going on there now?
Sorry, he actually did a good job, but I'll give you a little bit more detail. So VidCon actually started 10 years ago, 2010, call it 9 years ago. And it was two YouTube stars, people who were big on early days of YouTube. They were vloggers. They basically did this thing where they talked back and forth using video. They decided they want to do this conference to get fans of YouTube creators together in the same place as the creators themselves, because, it was all done online. It was all delivered digitally. And so in LA, now have you guys been to Century City in LA, which is
sure.
So there's, it's where CAA, the big talent agencies are all there. It was on a Saturday and Sunday in 2010 in the Hyatt across the street. And they had about 1,400 people. And there were a whole bunch of these early creators on YouTube, a lot of fans. We were there because I was running an online video company at the time. Some of our folks were there. And I'd still remember thinking it was so funny. Here we are across the street from the world's biggest talent agency, the guys who, run all the big movie stars and TV stars and everything. They had no idea what was going on across the street and the fact that their entire world was about to change. So that was the first one. 1,400 people.
In 2010.
In 2010.
So how many people? 400.
1,400.
1,400.
Yep.
At
from
the
all
Hyatt.
over, from all over the U.S.
Yeah, mostly California, but yeah, people from all over.
Early days of YouTube stars.
Early
YouTube
stars.
What type of content were they creating?
Well, so there was differences. There was so Hank and John Green, who started it. Hank lives in Missoula,
Right?
The Missoula connection, and they're science nerds and very nerdy, into Harry Potter, into a lot of those sort of more fan fiction style things. And so there was a lot of that. There was a lot of singing. There were people, great musicians. There were like Phil DeFranco, who did a lot of news stuff. There was sort of more family stuff. And so, but a lot of the early YouTube creators, if you think, YouTube really started to hit its stride in 2009, 2010, 2011, didn't become a big cultural deal that everybody knew for a couple of years later. But this was sort of the genesis of that.
Sure.
Right. Well, now it's no big deal if you click on YouTube and something has 35 million views.
Yeah.
I mean, it's astounding.
Yes.
The penetration that it has. You mentioned something I want to get back to. Was the big entertainment, empire totally caught off guard by this insurrection?
A good number of them were, and in many ways still are.
Yeah.
So what you see, and as YouTube has grown up, and is these stars of YouTube are different than television or movies. Now, what happens in TV and movies is you never see your audience. You have all these barriers between you and your audience. If you're a TV anchor, you've got teleprompters and you've got agents and you got to do your movies and they premiere and you never see your audience. Most people, I used to work in television before that. Most people in TV are afraid of their audience. Whereas YouTube, because there's a social connection and there was a community right there, and you put something up and the people got to you right away and there was this connection back and forth, it wasn't traditional media as a megaphone. I stand on a corner with my megaphone and I yell at my audience. YouTube and other social media and social video is a conversation, and it's more of a community. And you sit as a creator at the center of that community, but you have a dialogue between everybody that's in your community and that community. All those people talk to each other. It's a very different way to think about media.
So but there is with YouTube a slight delay, right? So the feedback loop is what? It's comments, it's response videos, it's that's the feedback loop. It's not quite live feedback, is it? Or can it be?
Well, in the early days of YouTube, it was not live because they did not have a live component to it.
Right.
Now we're seeing live video and other things happen where you can have immediate feedback and have an immediate connection. But you're hitting on a good point. And that's one of the reasons why Hank and John did did VidCon, because they wanted to get a place where they could have that direct, real-time interaction with their best fans.
Right. Right, because then now that is that's the forum for it.
Yeah, exactly. That was a place where they could all get together and celebrate the love of this new media they were creating and the connection that they had with each other.
So is the VidCon kind of format where, the VidCon stars are on stage, the video superstars are on stage talking, and are they shooting video while they're talking? Is that traditionally how it goes, or is it more of like a TED Talk? Is it a...
Well, so over time, now we just finished our 8th VidCon in the U.S. Over time, it grew. And so that original vision of, we now do what's called 3 tracks, 3 different sets of content. But the original one, the community one, where we get the community together with their favorite stars, there are stage shows and there are musical performances.
I see.
There are also autograph signings and pictures taken.
Like Comic-Con.
Yeah, I mean, people call us in, but some people say that VidCon is Comic-Con for online video fans. And there's a shred of truth to that.
And what's the age range of your attendees?
So the community attendees,
right,
the fans, and they come to hang out with their online video stars and each other, roughly is in the 14 to 20-year-old range.
Really? That young?
Right. But that's not all. So over time, we've grown to be, we've added additional tracks. So year 3, I think they started adding industry content. So a business started to form up around these online video stars and creators, and this is the business that I was running at the time, and started building a set of content just for them. Wow. So that would be more TED Talk-like stuff and panels and keynotes talking about monetization, how to build businesses and how to build audiences.
I see.
And then a couple years ago, added in a 3rd track that sits in between. And that is for people who want to be the next big online video creators, who want to build their audiences and grow their channels and become the next Hank Green or John Green or Phil DeFranco or Doty or whoever, Dan and Phil. And it teaches them how to do that and also inspires them, lessons from the creators. So so the age range, so overall it's about 30,000 actually last year, 28, 30,000.
Wow.
We had about 20,000 fans. We had 7,000 creators, or 5 to 6,000 creators, and then about 3,500 on the industry. So those 3 tracks. Industry, average age is about 35, maybe 40. Creator average age is about 20, 25. And then community average age is about 15, 16, 17.
That's really an interesting mix compared to most of the kind of conferences in the entertainment world, really.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there is no other media conference where you go to it to learn about this industry that we're building and get inspired, and then you're on the 3rd floor of the Anaheim Convention Center, which is where it's held, and then down on the 1st floor, there's a bunch of teenagers running around so excited because they just saw one of their favorite creators, and they're screaming, yelling, and there's all that passion. And like I said, people, in the media business, you guys are in the media business, I mean, a lot of people in the media business, whether they're creators or they're or their execs, are afraid of their fans.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can't be afraid of your fans in this world.
Is the content changing in terms of moving away more from, entertainment to commercial and business content and other uses for YouTube other than just for amusement?
Well, I think it's not changing, but it's expanding.
Okay.
So we still have, if you think about video-based content, before the internet, it was 30 minutes and 60-minute TV shows. It was 2-hour movies. As the internet started to come out, we started getting rid of those barriers. And so you could do a scripted story, and you could do it in 2 minutes. You could do it in 5 minutes. You could do it in 10 minutes. You didn't need to tell people, this is on every week at 8 p.m. Make sure you show up, because you just go and watch it on demand. On the news side, newscasts were a half hour, 30 or an hour. You can start to do more, however long it needs to be. And over time, new types of content, new formats have developed. So, one of the classic ones, and I was editor-chief of this magazine, PC Magazine, and we reviewed stuff, hardware and software. The unboxing video, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Have you seen those? The new iPhone comes out. The first person to get it, they stick a camera over it. They take it out. They're like, oh, look at this manual. Look at this lovely packaging.
Right.
And that wonder and joy of opening that new thing is a whole new.
Do you watch the TV show White Famous with Jay Farrow on Showtime?
No.
So it's funny. He brings one of his friends is bringing a date to a dinner party, and his date is a spokesmodel, and she's famous for doing unboxing videos on YouTube.
Right. That's what's made her famous.
She explains to the TV network head what an unboxing video is.
That's awesome.
But from some people more my age who are, technology literate, between Google and YouTube, I go to it mostly to get information, how to get scratches off my car, finish. And there's a video, on how to do that. There'll be an article and, about, building something or creating something. And then I go to YouTube and look at and see how it, or I want to go and travel to, Croatia. And then I go and look at a video from Croatia. I see YouTube more rather than as a trifle in a way. I'm not trying to minimize these other things, but they're entertainment and diversions. I see it as a real useful tool for, replacing the Encyclopedia Britannica in multi-dimensional ways.
It is a repository of everything you could possibly do in a visual medium, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's animation, it's those sorts of things. So depending on who you are and what you're looking for, it's that kind of stuff. It's fans of Minecraft, right? This incredible game that kids love. You can sit and watch people play Minecraft for hours.
Right.
There's talk about the unboxings. One of the biggest stars on YouTube right now are 8-year-old kids doing toy reviews. They're making millions and millions and
millions. That's crazy.
And how
are they monetizing it? By the way, how are the creators monetizing it?
YouTube has a very robust advertising department that sells pre-rolls and overlays and skippable ads, but also in sponsorship. So in the middle of a video, the creator can stop and say, hey, this video is sponsored by my favorite headphones. They're from Sennheiser. I put them on and wear them every day, and they're awesome, and you should buy them. They do a much better job than I do on that. But
it's like podcasts.
Like radio, right?
Right, it's like radio. Right. It's like integrated.
1-800-Flowers.
Right, 1-800-Flowers, exactly, or a mattress firm.
When I was teaching at the university, I used YouTube as one of my primary go-to teaching tools. I'd be talking to students and say, when Bobby Kennedy gave his speech after Martin Luther King's assassination, I said, how many of you ever heard that? And none of them had. I said, well, watch this, boom, 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 and show it in class. I mean, you can pull anything out.
Anything.
And that's what I find, very useful and also very exciting because you can get it so quickly as opposed to the way it used to be.
Well, and to pull this back a little bit to Missoula for a minute,
Right.
Hank Green, who started VidCon and has a couple of other businesses here in town, and his brother John is in Indianapolis, they, a lot of what they do at one of their other companies, Complexly, is make education videos. They work with PBS. They do SciShow and Crash Course, which is all about history. Amazingly interesting stuff used in classrooms all over the country and all over the world.
That's amazing.
You mentioned, and I know from looking just briefly, that VidCon also has a conference in Amsterdam and Australia. Is it the same metrics there, the same kind of audience, the same kind of mix, the same kind of interest, the same kind of sophistication?
Yeah, look, there is passion about online video all around the world. And what we're very, very focused on as we build events around the world is being what I call geographically intentional. Let's not just try and replicate the U.S. model in Europe or in Australia. And so in Australia, interestingly, because it is a single language, single country, it's a big country, they love online video. VidCon feels a little bit like that there. So we have we have 3 tracks. We have creator track and community track and the industry track. And it's huge, and people come from all over Australia for it, and they love it. In Europe, very different, right? We've got 20 or 30 countries in Europe. They speak different languages. They have different cultures. They have different things that they love with online video. The German online video star is not the same as the Spanish online video star.
Right.
So the focus for us there is more around the more business-oriented stuff we do. So we do the industry side. So how do you build a business on this across Europe? And we do the creator side. How do you become a great creator and build up your channel and your audience? Because those things are more universal across many of the different countries. Now, there are changes and they're different, but it's not as different as sort of the German YouTube star versus the Spanish or Italian YouTube star.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I taught a graduate course in Italy with American students and Italian students. And one of the exercises we did was, we asked the Americans, pick one video that you could show that would convey to our Italian students what America is all about. Just one. It's hard to do, just one. Said the same exercise the Italians. Pick one video that would convey Italy to America everywhere now. And the 2 videos that came out of it, the American, at the time, this is 5-6 years ago, had Kid Rock's All Summer Long as the video to show America. And the Italians had a travelogue showing different towns and cities, and it was a completely different approach to it. They needed a very literal video to show, and ours was a little bit more, symbolic.
Right.
Kids meeting at the lake, smoking dope.
Right.
What growing up is like, kind of because that was the video that went along with that Kid Rock movie.
Let's do a quick
Sure.
ID. Our guest is Jim Louderback, CEO of VidCon. Sorry, Arnie.
No, I was saying, so you have to. You already figured that out, that you have to take that into consideration as you go to other markets around the world, particularly non-English speaking markets.
Exactly. And there's different cultures and the way that they adopt things. I mean, the way they look at news is different. The way you consume news in the UK, very different than the way you consume it in Germany. And the fact is, magazines are huge in certain countries and not in other countries. Just the way that the people in those countries relate to media, very different.
Right. Exactly.
Jim, let's switch gears for a second. Why VidCon for you? I mean, if I look at your experience, Ziff Davis, PC Magazine, a very successful investor in different startups in Silicon Valley, and I'm looking at his LinkedIn. And
did you go to his YouTube video?
No, but Discovery. No, we actually had drinks the other night, and I was just fascinated by listening to kind of his journey here, right? His path here, and at this point in your career, this is an interesting step to kind of take the reins of a very cool company, but it's in Missoula, Montana. It's like the 3 of us are from the coasts, but we're in Missoula, Montana. First of all, why VidCon? And then, what's it like looking, at Missoula, Montana with
fresh
West Coast eyes?
Yeah.
Right.
So first of all, why VidCon? So I was at the first VidCon company that I ran. We sponsored VidCon, spoke at most of them. After I sold my company to Discovery. I was at Discovery. Actually, I brought in 2013, VidCon was right before Shark Week, so I brought a 60-foot mechanical shark to VidCon.
Wow.
And I had creators do things like, chomping surfboards and Like iJustine, who was famous for some of her iPhone stuff, had her iPhone chopped. But after I left Discovery, I called Hank up, and I couldn't. I was taking a little break for various different reasons. But I love VidCon a lot, and I was like, "You want any help with it?" And he's like, "Yeah, That was when they were launching the creator track, that middle track." He said, "You want to come run the industry track for me?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a blast." And so I did. And then this past summer, Hank was like, "Hey, some stuff's going on. I've got like 12 companies I'm running. Do you want to come be CEO of VidCon?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a blast. I'll do it." And so for me personally, my career has always been a series of not a linear step of going A, B, C, D, E, and getting up to, that pinnacle. It's always been, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like fun. I'll do that." So I'm not sure I think anybody else should follow the same career advice, but I do, for me, somebody telling me there's a great job, and it may mean I have to move my family across the country. It may mean I'm going from, working in consulting and banking to going to run a magazine. Be like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a blast. Let's do it. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And it's so much fun, and I love it. And I'm continually glad when I do things. And when I do it, I learn so much more than I ever knew. So, always learning, always interested. So that's how that ended up.
My career trajectory took the flip side of yours. Instead of saying, "Wow, that sounds like a blast," I always looked at different steps as under the heading of, what's the worst thing that could happen? Right? If I go to Russia and start a consultancy in the Soviet Union, which I did in 1987,
awesome.
What's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
And I'm still alive, so the worst thing I thought that could happen.
Well, you're in Missoula, Montana, and we're all together.
Right. So you're the CEO of VidCon. What are your plans for the future? What's your vision of where this thing ought to be going?
So there are a couple different things there. One is certainly continue to expand internationally. We just started international expansion. Australia was a huge success, and we're going to keep on building that up. In Europe, focusing on this kind of more B2B side of it, so more on the the industry side and the creator side, and building that up and rolling that out as something that in success we think we can take that around the world and around the U.S. at a smaller level and doing that. But one of the real opportunities I think VidCon has that's out there, and we've always been creator first. We've always been, Hank and John started that. They started as creators. They celebrate creators. They want to give tools to the creators. They want to grow this creative ecosystem. Research now, and we were talking about this the other night. I know you've got teens. I don't know if you have kids, older, younger. No. Your teens, they want to be YouTube stars. And in our day, when we were growing up, I want to be a movie star. I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut, a fireman, whatever.
Right.
Now, the number one thing that somebody between the age of 10 and 20 wants to do is be a YouTube star and work in online video. And we have the opportunity to help them, to help those people who have that dream. They're not all going to be great, famous creators. Nobody, not everyone's going to be a PewDiePie, right? But they can be producers, and they can do audience development, and they can work in the industry. And we have an opportunity to celebrate it, but also teach them and help them achieve those dreams. And so does that mean we do VidCon University? I don't think we're going to do that. But there's certainly a whole stream of information and experiences and understanding and learning that we can do to help those, I won't call them kids, but that group achieve their career
producers and creators. So, it's interesting. My son, who's 16, is always looking at a 3.5-inch screen, whether it's his iPhone watching NBA videos,
tracking you,
NBA videos, or Snapchat, or Instagram stories, right, or Facebook or FaceTime, Facebook Live, or videos of gamers playing games,
right,
and or then he looks up at the big 50-inch screen and he plays the game once in a while. But the least interesting thing to him is the thing that's most interesting to me, which is leaning back and watching a football game, or a basketball game,
or a full movie,
or CNN, like long form programming or live programming. They don't care. I'm like, William. I'm like,
it really is a significant shift. When I was growing up, you're growing up. You had new media formats. When radio to TV to movies,
right?
But the business model remains similar in all of those, media. It's totally changed now, and the exponential nature of it. For example, I just was reading about it. I thought it's in a slightly different field, but it shows you what's potentially available. The two friends in Chicago who did RX bars. Did you read that story? You know the story. So in 2013, This guy in his mother's basement in the suburbs of Chicago.
Right.
Takes 4 ingredients: vanilla, egg whites, almonds, and figs, and makes RX bar, a protein bar. And he gets his buddy, and they each put in $5,000. 2013. 3 weeks ago, they sold the company to Kellogg for $600 million.
Wow.
I mean,
good return on investment.
From 10 grand. I mean, a totally different bid. You couldn't do that 30 years ago. It wouldn't be possible. And in the video area, in the entertainment,
right,
the metrics have changed like that.
Well, but look, it's not as different as you might think, and there are certain parallels as well. Remember, I mean, back when we were growing up, we bought an LP, or a CD, and we bought all those songs and listened to it. And then over time, it became about the songs themselves. You could buy the individual songs on iTunes, and you didn't buy the LPs anymore, and you could make your own mixes. I mean, I was in radio in college. I made my own mixes in college. But you could do, you could do that. Well, think about the Tonight Show or the Saturday Night Live.
Right.
Saturday Night Live is a series of skits that some are related and some are not. You think of the Tonight Show is the same way. We have this guest, we have this guest, we have the Great Carmack, we have whatever. Well, that now when you look at video consumption, it's almost like the same thing happened when you ripped the CD up and just went from song to song to song. We're ripping the TV shows up, and we're just going to little segment to segment to segment, and today's viewers are pulling those segments in together. Now, when your son watches people play video games, that is very similar to you or me sitting down and watching a football game.
Right. Well, it is.
It is. You would spend an hour or 2 hours watching. My son was watching League of Legends championships at 2 a.m, and he has favorite teams. They've got fantasy gamers, things like fantasy football. So there are similar things that happen. It's just, in many ways, today's media consumer is becoming the person that stitches it all together rather than having somebody else stitch it together for you.
Right. And what I find interesting is that he is more turned on by playing a game of Knicks versus Cleveland
than watching the NBA game, than watching the real game.
2K, right. Exactly. Than watching the real game. I'm like, well, what the heck's the point? I'm like, do you realize the reason that game exists is because of this live game that's happening?
Well, the big change that's happened, I think, in the era where you got CDs and LP, you had to go out of your home into your vehicle or with public transportation, go to a store, look through it, buy it, bring it back. You don't have to do any of that anymore.
Yeah, you do have access. The whole world is right there at your computer, right?
Right, phone.
Your phone, exactly. But you do still have that need to get together with people, thus VidCon.
Right.
Which is, how do you get 30,000 people to come to Anaheim and not go to Disneyland? It's because they all love online video and they all have this community. And we, I believe, as humans, have that need to get together face to face in real time to have a community experience, and we satisfy that.
I'm thinking about the old head of our distribution company when I worked in the music business at RCA Records said, he goes, record retail is not going away because people are, by the very nature, want to be around one another and listen to music together. He was right, but he was wrong on where it would take place. It wasn't the record store. They could care less. It was at a concert. It was at a live event that was a one-time scenario, a one-time event, a one-time happening versus listening to a record.
Exactly. Someday somebody's going to look at the movie High Fidelity and say, what is that store? What are those people looking at?
Bookstores.
Bookstores. But the creative juices in some ways just cannot be completely satisfied digitally. You have to meet in person and see the people and talk with them and share ideas and experiences in a group setting that so far cannot really be completely simulated by the the online experience.
Yeah, look, we are a tribal.
That's right.
We're tribal, and we want to get together. But I will say, more and more as we look at VR and augmented reality and the ability to insert all of your senses into a digital world, that we may come up with ways to do that fully digitally. However, we're many years away. Anybody's tried VR so far, it just doesn't feel enough like you're somewhere.
Do you see there's a time where no one will ever, movie theaters will be obsolete and people won't go to the communal experience of going to a IMAX theater and just have it replicated in their home because of virtual reality?
Yeah, but I still like going to the movie theater.
Yeah, because they make better popcorn.
Exactly. Our guest is Jim Louderback, the CEO of VidCon here in Missoula, Montana. Okay, so Jim, you lived in Jersey. He's originally from Jersey.
Okay. That's why you
Philadelphia.
That's the real reason you want.
Oh, there's a million reasons, but he's East Coast. then moved to Washington, D.C., right, with Discovery? Were you in Washington?
No, I stayed out in California.
Were you in California? Okay.
Yeah.
Give us your...
Was that when Jim Cook was running Discovery?
No, this was 2012.
Okay, way after.
When did you get out to the West Coast?
So we moved out to the West Coast in 1997, started a cable network at Ziff Davis, where I was running magazines. It's called ZDTV, that became Tech TV. Moved out, stayed there in really 97, 98. But... it's interesting. I went to college in a little college town on the East Coast called the University of Vermont in Burlington, Vermont.
Great town.
It's a great town.
Little Missoula. Little Missoula.
And I'd never been to Missoula before starting to work with VidCon a couple years ago, and it feels kind of similar.
Yeah, they are.
There's a lot of similarities to it.
Except you can't get lobster here.
Lobster. Yeah. It was a little. I mean, it's on Lake Champlain, but yeah, no, I hear you. It's not. Yeah. It's not New England, but it's.
How do you like your? So you've been coming to Missoula now for a couple of months, right? How do you like it?
I love it. I think it's great. I mean, it's so funny. Last time I came, when it was last week. Yeah, that's right. I was in California. Woke up in the morning and it was sunny and warm. Flew out here, and got here late for the night. I got up the next morning, and I'm staying just on the other side of the highway from the office, north side. And I walked out and it was snowing.
Yeah,
and I was like a kid on Christmas morning. I was like, "Yay!"
It's like being back in Vermont, right? Exactly.
It was I haven't seen a lot of snow. And it was just
not in San Francisco.
It was nice, not in San Francisco. It was just so nice to walk through a nice snowstorm and smell the air like that. So yeah, I think Missoula, you got something special going on here.
So he lives in Pacifica over on the West Coast, south of San Francisco, which you were telling me your view there is kind of gorgeous.
Yeah, it's right off Highway 1. We're on the ocean side of Highway 1. So I sit and watch surfers in the morning, and I can tell you the surf report today because I left this morning before coming out here. It was pretty flat. So a lot of stand-up surf, a lot of stand-up paddleboarders. No one was surfing. So
now here you learn the school. How many inches of powder there is.
Yeah. I am psyched to get back on my boards. There's a lot of great ski areas around here.
Well, Snowball,
fantastic.
Yeah, Snowball right there.
Oh, we have one of the greatest mountains right here. This local mountain is incredible.
Right, it's really great. Then you can go to Big Mountain. You go to Big Sky. I mean, you got fantastic skiing across the state.
So so Arnie, you actually had asked me a question about VidCon and with the expansion, right? And
right.
Is that the plan? Is
the plan to expand?
I know you mentioned a little bit
and sell it, or the plan? What's the strategy on it?
The strategy is to build a sustainable business that celebrates and advances the ecosystem of online video. So, and look, Hank and John still own the business. It's their business. They could do lots of different things with it. But right now, we're focused on let's build a great business. Let's build a profitable business.
Right.
Let's go down that path. Let's build a Missoula business. So one that kind of is a little bit of that work to live, not live to work that you see particularly in San Francisco, New York, Boston, places I've spent most of my career. Let's build something that has great benefits for our fans, for our customers, for the creators, for our sponsors, and our employees, and continue to celebrate and help grow this industry because we're at the beginning of it, not the end of it.
Which is amazing. And you know what? And I think you're going to be struck with what it's like when you come to Missoula, whether you decide to move here or spend half of your time here, whatever it is, just kind of the good-natured, kind of easygoing atmosphere that you have here. People really do work to live. They don't live to work. And we talked about this the other day about hey, at 5 o'clock quitting time, everyone's out of here.
People have made compromises in their life, and they've decided that striving for the biggest paycheck they could get is not really a goal for a lot of people anymore. Trying to balance between a work life and a non-work life, and having and obviously here people like outdoorsy things. If you're coming to Missoula to stay in your house and just watch video streaming, this isn't the place to be. Scott had some relatives visit a summer or so ago from New Jersey, and they pulled me aside and they said, "So what do you do here?" They was just so shocked that it was just so outdoorsy. There weren't, skyscrapers. There weren't, what do you do? I said, we do the same thing you do, but we enjoy it more.
Yeah.
That's my Empire State Building.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and look, in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and we moved out there. I moved from New York City, and it was more of a lifestyle place then, I think, than it is now. It's kind of changed a little bit, but there are a lot of people that moved to California, the Bay Area, and just stayed for the lifestyle. They could have moved other places.
Yes.
And Missoula just feels like that's taken it to another degree. And look, I love to hike. I've been rafting. Love to explore that more. I mean, I don't really surf, but you guys got them river surfers, and they look crazy.
Oh yeah,
that's a lot of fun to watch.
Strongwater, we've had them on the show. It's fantastic. How many? There's a big community of river surfers in Missoula,
and in many communities around here that are like Missoula.
Right, Boise has a big river surfing
and river
culture.
I think it's interesting, and I think it'll be interesting to see how Missoula inspires you, right? Now that you become part of it, to figure out where do you take VidCon, and maybe it's inspired even more by Missoula.
Well, the other thing we have here, which is the only non-coastal entertainment management program at a university,
right?
And the program here is a fantastic one. And we've had the director on the show. We've also had Nick Chakota, who has built a pretty interesting inland media empire with 160 employees, almost all of whom came from the entertainment management program. So there is a lot of critical mass here for some of the things that you're thinking about, and some of the talent for it as well.
Absolutely. I also love that this is on the stopping grounds for bands as they go from Denver and other places to get to Seattle. And so there's I love music. There's a great music culture here, and a couple of the people that we work with at VidCon either worked in that business or still do some stuff there. Whether it's Top Hat or other places, or Colin Hickey, guy who runs everything, who's amazing, who really, he's the guy who runs everything. He was in a band.
Right.
And, he was in
DJ.
Great band and DJs. Yeah. So anyway, it's good to see.
No, we should have Colin and Molly on. Colin and Molly from HB Enterprises. They do MissoulaEvents.net. And
Gatherboard.
And Gatherboard.
Totally get them on.
Mm-hmm. They're great. We have not had them on yet. Our guest is Jim Louderback, CEO of VidCon. After this break, we're going to talk a little bit more to Jim about what he has planned for VidCon, but also I want to, get his take on Missoula, like favorite places. He's only been here for a little while, but let's get a sense of what he's interested.
A newbie's take on Missoula.
A newbie's take on Missoula. Back after this. Okay, we are back with What Do You Know, proudly supported and sponsored by Dawn Maddox and Engel and Volker's Luxury Real Estate here in Missoula, Montana. Our guest is Jim Louderback. Arnie.
So how do people find out about the conference and get involved and get tickets, and when's the next one? We haven't gone into any of that.
So vidcon.com, you can go check that out. The next one in the U.S., we're in June 21st, 22nd, 23rd in Anaheim. Mm-hmm. Because we bring 300 or 400 of these great creators to the event, and they all talk about it. So if you're a fan of online video, you're watching your creator, your favorite creators, and your creator's like, hey, I'm going to be at VidCon, come join me. Cha-ching, they buy a ticket. So there's definitely a good buzz there. We do all the basics of their digital marketing on Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter and those things, and spread the word. And on the industry side, we spend a lot of time. We do thought leadership articles and write blog posts and do things like that and try and stay out in front of what's there. And we bring in great speakers who spread the word as well.
What do you think the next big thing is? Is there a next big thing just chugging down the path somewhere?
So I'll talk about two next big things. One is a little bit maligned now. I talked about it earlier, virtual reality and artificial reality. The history of media and digital is that digital technology has transformed every media that we've created so far. Books and magazines and music, and now film and television are totally being disrupted by it. And it's all because bandwidth. The faster that connection into your house, whether it's megabits and up to gigabits, means that now it's faster. So we do movies and TV because they take more bandwidth, but the bandwidth doesn't stop. And so now we're creating new digital media that would never, ever have been created without digital. We're not disrupting, we're creating new. And that's what virtual reality and augmented reality, Pokemon Go and things like that. We're now creating these brand new things. We have brand new media canvases to paint with. So that's one. And so I think we're going to see that increase. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I love that we're going to be developing new media on the backs of digital technology.
Now, is that institutionalized or is that grassroots, this new media coming up?
It all starts grassroots. It starts with somebody who's really smart and they built some cool piece of technology, or they tried something, it did something different. Think about the early days of movies, right? The
Sure.
Battleship Potemkin, they started moving the camera around, and the great train robbery where they actually didn't just stick a camera on a pole and try and make a radio show with video. So we see that. But you see bigger companies adopt it and try and build businesses out of it. It's not easy for them. what you do end up is you get these smart people that have a vision that can think creatively. You know, Steve Jobs, think different, and do that and figure these things out.
Okay, so that's one.
That's one. So two, the financial relationship between creators and their audience is in flux. And advertising is, I won't say dying, but it is changing. And interruption advertising, you know, you're watching a show and then your ads come on and then you watch again.
Right.
Is that's going away. And the younger you are, the more you're not going to do interruptive advertising. You got a TiVo and you're fast forwarding things, or you've got an ad blocker on your browser and other things. But interestingly enough, kids, you know, Gen Zs, millennials love brands. They just hate interruptive advertising. So there are new ways that advertising is coming in, but there are also new ways for creators and fans to have a commercial relationship between the two of them without all the middlemen. So something like a company called Patreon that allows, if you're a fan of, say, your show, you can have a tip jar and people give you money directly. You don't need all that infrastructure.
Right.
That's cool.
But the next thing that's happening is through blockchain and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and, you know, there's
micropayments.
Micropayments. The whole thing happening with Bitcoin that's, you know, that is another, it's another tulip bubble that's waiting to burst or bursting right now. But there's an underlying technology where you can have transactions between people that are anonymous on this chained ledger that will change so many aspects of the relationship between content creators and consumers that we're on the absolute beginning of.
That's amazing. So it's almost so pay-per-view. Is that the simplest way to think about it, or pay-per? Like what? Paper byte, paper megabyte, paper?
In many ways, or it's that I like you and I give you a penny, or I give you a little bit of this, or I have an extended relationship with you that's very different from, just think about it. Creators, if you want to get to an audience, this is pre-YouTube. Like in my early days of magazines, I was lucky. I had a column in a computer magazine when I was 30. Amazing, because they're gatekeepers. People who published magazines were gatekeepers. The movie studios were gatekeepers. The TV networks were gatekeepers. Right. You had to go to them. You had to suck up to them. You had to work as an intern or a PA and gradually make your way up the chain until you could actually do a show or do this or that. Well, the internet removes those barriers. Back to what we were talking about before.
Sure.
And I can go out and create a direct connection with an audience and build that up. And it started with bloggers. And musicians could go direct to audience. And now video creators can go direct to audience.
And our president of the United States can go direct to audience. I mean, think about it.
It is. It's a retail transaction. You don't need people in the middle. Well, now we're starting to build payment structures that allow you, going direct to your audience, to have a payment structure that nobody else gets in the middle of.
That's
disintermediation.
Yes.
We love that.
Yeah, well, and look, the fact that...
I don't love it.
The fact that media builds audiences for their media that are proxies for audiences that companies want to reach is going away. If I'm a brand, why can't I build my own media and go right to the audience I want? I don't need the middleman.
Right. There's a different kind of transaction that's taking place, and there has to be some kind of currency, whether it's crypto, that takes place in order for both parties to benefit from that transaction.
Exactly. And why give a big digital video network 45% of that money,
right,
or 30% of that money, or 50%? You know, why have all of those people in your pocket taking money out when you can go direct and have people pay you directly?
Well, a lot of these folks are building their connection to the audience on the backs of these bigger companies. Correct?
Oh yeah,
but I guess the point is that when you think about a media brand in this town, you can think about KGVO, you could think about K-Pax, but you could also think about the Big Dipper or Ear Candy or Logjam. These are companies that are media platforms, okay? And people that are media platforms. So what's next?
We're in for a lot of changes, Scott. I don't know if my heart can take it.
It can, Arnie. You're very adaptive. I've seen it. Anyway, this has been great, Jim.
Jim, it's a pleasure having you on the show. We'd love to have you on again.
Anytime. I love doing radio. You guys are awesome, and I'm going to be here.
And this
he's getting a show, by the way. That's the other thing we've done.
This content is fast. I mean, this whole content of this discussion is really fascinating, and it's an unexplored area for lots of our listeners.
And it's happening right here in Missoula.
Right here in River City.
The Garden City.
The Garden River City.
The Treasure State. Arnie, I'll see you next week.
Take care, Scott.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichman@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.